Howdy y'all, Wyrm here. This is my first video of 2021, so happy 2021 to one and all. I know we're only a few days into it and it's already pretty much a disaster so far, but enough about that. I'm here today to talk about the announcement showcase that's coming up in February for Fanfest XIV. Now, there's been a lot of speculation since last year, since this was announced in the live letter, as to exactly what this showcase is going to be, what does it mean for the series going forward, etc, etc. Now, I'm just going to dive into the subject right away and just outline some things that we may or may not see in the announcement showcase coming up in February. So first things first, you need to look at the actual name of this event. It's called the Fanfest XIV Announcement Showcase. Up until this point, we've only had live letters, so we've never had an announcement showcase before. At least I don't remember us having one. So the fact that they're changing it means it's something significant, and rightfully so. I think they've got all their information together, they're ready to do it, and they're just going to start announcing stuff now. And they needed a proper platform in order to announce the significant announcements that are going to come in 2021. Starting with the first one. The next expansion for Fanfest XIV, which is 6.0, whatever it's going to be called. Now, we've been speculating exactly what this expansion is going to be called, what it's about. Our best guess at the moment is that it's going to be focused entirely on the Garleans and the Ascians, and concluding the storylines of both. Now, as you've probably seen from the storyline of Shadowbringers, the Garlean storyline is pretty much regressing very quickly at the moment, as is the Ascian one. So we're setting ourselves up for 6.0, and I think the announcement showcase is actually going to give us the announcement of the new expansion, and more than likely will give us a short expansion trailer along with it. Now, this is similar to what they've done with all the Fanfests as well. They released a short trailer in the first Fanfest, then the next Fanfest had an extended trailer, and then the final Fanfest had a full trailer. I think it's more than likely that we're actually going to get Fanfest XIV 6.0 announcement on February. I think that's the main reason they're doing this announcement showcase in the first place. Next, it's more than likely we're going to have multiple panels from the devs about the closing of Shadowbringers and the beginning of 6.0. Now, this is pretty much a given. We usually get this in the live letter as well. I think we're going to have the devs talking about the closing of the Shadowbringer storyline, the conclusion of all the mechanics and everything else we've had in the expansion, and the move over to 6.0 and what we may expect to happen. And this might include the introduction or announcement of new features. We never know. The hint about a new job, jobs, or if we get any jobs at all. Now, this is something that's been highly speculated, and people have been speculating that we may not get the announcement until Fanfest, in whatever form Fanfest is going to be. But I think given the fact that Fanfest may, more than likely, 90% sure, will go digital, I think it's more than likely that if there is going to be a job coming and they announce the expansion in the announcement showcase, I think they will announce whatever job we get, even if they only announce one job if we end up getting two. Now, this is not a given. We don't even know if we're getting a new job. Everything's been pretty hush-hush, even more so than with previous expansions. Usually we had hints and tips, but now it's been very hush-hush, and I think they're doing that intentionally. The next one's a bit of a funny one. Male Vieras, female Hrothgar. Now, I know this joke's been done to death. People are going like, where's my male Viera? Where's my female Hrothgar? Yeah. And to be honest, it's a fair topic. People expect gender-neutral jobs and classes. I mean, it hasn't been since 1.0 that we had a gender-locked actual race, when we had the female-only Mikote and we had the male-only Rogadin. Now, 1.0 was a bit of a shambles, as everybody remembers. I think the only reason we actually got gender-locked races back then is because the devs were too busy trying to get the actual game out, and as we all know, it turned out to be a disaster. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself now, well, Shadowbringers released with a male only and a female only, so what do you say to that? Well, to be honest, I have no reason why they do that, except for the fact that Viera traditionally has always been female. However, in a lore standpoint, the males do exist. I think from a lore standpoint, they live in their own separate villages inside the jungles or forests that the Viera actually inhabit, and they only communicate with the females for mating purposes, exchanging information, defense, etc, etc. They don't interact other than that, so it's kind of like Vulcans from Star Trek, if you think like, no, not like Vulcans, wait, no, hang on. The most likely announcement we're going to get is the information for the final patch 5.5 of the Shadowbringers expansion, which will lead us into 6.0. Now, traditionally in all the other expansions we've had patches up until the 0.5, so we're on 0.4 right now. So we should be expecting a patch 5.5 to finish off Shadowbringers and lead us directly into 6.0. Now, regarding what this patch is actually going to contain, I think it's more than likely it's going to contain a number of important things that we usually get with a final patch. In this case, I think it's going to be the final Alliance raid of the Near raid storyline. So we're definitely going to get that. It needs to finish that off. Then we have a final Extreme Trial, which is more than likely going to be the conclusion of Gaius' Chronicles of a New Era. So we've already gotten multiple weapon fights already, and I think we need to fight the last one. And unfortunately I can't remember its name, but it's out there, and I think that's going to be the final Extreme. We're also going to get a new dungeon, more than likely. We always get a new dungeon with a major patch, that's a given. And then finally, the conclusion of the Bojan fronts. Now, we have Bojan content actually incoming at the moment with the next patch that's incoming. However, we don't know if that's the conclusion of the Bojan content for this actual expansion, or if it's going to lead us into one more, which will then lead us into 6.0, where the story is going to continue more than likely. Next off is multiple segments from the devs and support staff. I think this is a given the fact that they're making this event far bigger than a live letter. I think it's more than likely that we're going to get multiple segments from multiple staff members, and particularly the support staff as well. Like, usually we only hear from the staff in Japan during a live letter. I think it's more than likely we're going to get segments from the staff in Europe, the staff in the US, from all over. We've only heard a few standpoints from some of the staff at the moment, so I'd like to hear the other standpoints regarding the expansion and the upcoming one from the other staff members. Finally, the future of Final Fantasy XIV. Now, what the hell do I mean the future? It's a MMO, it gets expansions, that's its future. However, hear me out. People are speculating that 6.0 is going to be the conclusion of the FF14 storyline. Now, what the heck do I mean by that? Now, I think of it as a way of saying that Final Fantasy XIV 6.0 is going to be Final Fantasy XIV's Wrath of the Lich King. Now, if you're aware of what WoW Wrath of the Lich King is, that was pretty much the conclusion of the storylines of the games that set up World of Warcraft in the first place, which was Warcrafts 1, 2 and 3. Those are the games that World of Warcraft were based on. And at the conclusion of Wrath of the Lich King, it pretty much just tied up all the stories of the previous games and stories that came before. And then it just started inventing future stories. Now, for us, we have Final Fantasy XIV 1.0. And 1.0 focused mostly on the Garleans, and it focused on the Primals. Now, based on speculation, we're going to be concluding our storyline with the Garleans soon enough. Their empire is setting already, so it's only a matter of time. And considering in the last patch we actually made advancements in actually curing the thralls of the primals that we actually have encountered, it's more than likely we're going to resolve the primal storyline as well. So we never know what's going to happen, but I think more than likely, I think 6.0 will wrap up all the stories that have been there until this point. And then going forward, we can explore the rest of Hydaelyn. There's multiple continents we haven't even seen yet, so there's so much content out there. So I think it is 6.0 is going to be our Wrath of the Lich King, and then 7.0 is going to be our Mr. Pandaria, for example. New continent, new everything. Now finally we have news regarding the Fanfests. Now, we've all been chomping at the bit, including myself, just going, what the hell is going to happen with Fanfest? And I think more than likely, given the trouble we've already had with 2021, and given the fact that multiple lockdowns are still happening, COVID-19 is still ramping up with multiple strains, and everything's just getting worse, I think it's more than likely we're only going to get a digital-only Fanfest, which means that we'll have all our announcements over a day or two of digital Fanfests happening over multiple time periods. But I think they'll announce more details about the digital Fanfest once the announcement showcase begins. I think that's when we'll hear. And that's it, guys. Everything I think is going to be announced, or actually speculated is going to be announced during the announcement showcase. If you enjoyed this video, just leave a like down below, and I'd love to hear your comments regarding what you think is going to happen with the announcement showcase, and particularly what you think is going to happen with 6.0. I'd love to hear your guys' comments, because I've been reading them all over Reddit and multiple social media platforms as well, and there's just so many fascinating theories. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.